Let's just start with what happened last night. Obviously, there were a lot of changes made to the caucus process, including an attempt to actually make it a little bit more complex. Do we have a sense as to why they weren't able to get the data in a reliable fashion to get those results out last night?
Yeah, no, I believe they just had with some app problems. And this is, got to remember, this is all volunteer driven. Over 1,700 volunteer precinct captains out there that you depend upon them to get all the results tabulated and sent in. When the app had some problems, then you go to the old-fashioned way on the phones. It caused a delay. I think they did the right thing to wait and make sure they could report accurate results and not rush this.
John, of course, a lot of people today saying this is the end of the Iowa caucus, that caucuses may be undemocratic as they are because they take so much time, people have to reveal publicly their preferences. Then you add in this, whatever you want to call it, this screw up. Do you believe that this could be the end of Iowa's role as the first state to go, or is this the kind of thing that people often say every cycle, but then in the end, it'll stay?
Yeah, obviously they say this is the end of the Iowa caucuses and the Iowa-New Hampshire process every cycle.
Right.
This certainly is the most complicated result we've seen, and so I think there'll be pressure on change. I think the changes they insist upon this time helped contribute to the overload of information that shut things down. So it remains to be seen. The attention now shifts out of Iowa. And then this is a conversation that takes place after the general election about the caucus process going forward. So I think it's premature to make any predictions right now.
All right. Well, so we don't need to make predictions, John, but there has been, questions about just the caucus process in general. You're really only one of 4 states now that still relies on this. I think Nevada, Wyoming, North Dakota are the others. Can you just make an argument right now for me as to why the caucus process is better or produces something that's a little bit more tangible than just the normal, what we now consider just going to the polls and casting our votes?
Well, I mean, it is the most organic democratic participatory process where you have people in a room having a conversation. It brings politics, to much more to a level of conversation that I think helps the democratic process. That candidates are discussed both with the candidates and with your neighbors and friends and your community. That's a healthy dose of democracy. Now, whether that can mesh with today's desire for instantaneous reporting and results, that's what we have to work through. But it certainly has been a contributor to, I think, a very productive conversation with candidates and voters about policies that you'll lose if you go to a primary system where it's all TV driven. And you're going to see that now, I think, with some uncertainty coming out of Iowa. Does this become a battle of who puts most on TV? The caucus process and the local nature of this, I think, helps upstart candidates have a chance to compete.
John, obviously a lot of focus on this app that was used for people to report results from their caucus sites. Obviously in the old days, there was no need for apps and people wrote stuff down with pencil and paper and they called it in or whatever, and it seemed to work fine. There was never a problem of this magnitude prior to this year. Does there need to be reform or rethinking or slowing down as parties or state governments think about outsourcing the tech solutions to tech or the electoral solutions to tech companies and so forth, and moving away from what had been tried and true for a long time?
Yeah, I think that would be helpful if both states and even the national parties and federal government looked at how to help ensure quality data. This is it in your financial world. There's not a lot of patient capital out there. There's not a lot of patient politics out there.
Right.
People want instant information, and so how much do we adapt to fill that desire, or how much do we make sure that we preserve and maintain the integrity and the accuracy, which was what I think the Iowa Democratic Party is trying to do right now. Make sure they have sufficient results, accuracy accurate results. That's, I think, a more critical role
Right.
than rapid response. You know, what 6-8 years ago, you found out that Mitt Romney didn't win the Iowa caucus
Right.
about 2 weeks after the caucuses. So that's the balance we have to strike.